building community resilience. Furthermore, knowledge transfer and capacity building between both state and non-state actors are key enablers in realizing climate targets. Today, we will have speakers from industry highlighting the work and contributions of non-state actors in the South African context. We have an esteemed panel today from Anglo American, Mr. Luyanda Mfeka, who is the External Communications Specialist from Anglo American South Africa, Mr. Vuyo Khahla, Executive VP for Strategy, Sustainability and Integrated Services at Sasol, Mr. Dan Dowling, who is a partner on the Net Zero Strategy and Transformation at PwC, Mr. Firoz Sheikh, who is an executive in advocacy and transformation at Polyco Pro NPC, and finally, Mr. Chej Pulshkok, the CEO of Scatec in South Africa. So thank you all for joining, and quickly over to you, Luyanda from Anglo.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Luyanda, I've already been introduced. We're going to jump straight into it. So for some of you who may not be familiar with Anglo American, Anglo American is a diversified global miner. Our roots run deep in South Africa, running almost over 100 years. We operate in some 15 countries, employing some 100,000 employees across those 15 countries, providing many of the metals and minerals that will be needed in order to power the just energy revolution, whether at home and further afield. What I'm going to do today is just give you a high-level overview of some of the work we're doing, in particular in creating what we call the regional renewable energy ecosystem. Now, that sounds like a mouthful, but in essence, what it is a build-out of renewable energy infrastructure spread out across the Southern African region, made up of a combination of wind, solar, and hopefully someday incorporating hydrogen infrastructure that will ultimately then be used to not only power our operations across all mines, but equally help build some additional resilience into the South African grid, which all we can agree is something that's needed right now. That is a build of some 3 to 5 gigawatts of renewable energy that we plan to roll out between now and somewhere within 2030. Already, just to give you an update of where we are now, we've already begun the process of licensing and permitting with an outlay of some 520 megawatts that will begin construction in the first half of next year, and then obviously building out that renewable energy infrastructure grid over the next couple of years. But a little less from me at this point. Let's get into the presentation where some more skilled people than I will walk you through what our vision is. If the clicker will play with me, there we go.
We might not see the impact a few raindrops can make. Yet, more droplets make puddles. Puddles begin to flow. They become streams. And streams become rivers. At Anglo American, we believe in the positive difference we can make to the lives of our people, communities, country, and planet when we all act together. This is made visible in our ongoing efforts to improve education outcomes, employment levels, and infrastructure in the communities in which we operate. In doing this, we also acknowledge that we can't create healthy, thriving, and sustainable communities without considering current energy constraints and climate challenges facing our nation.
South Africa is embarking on its next phase of its economic development, using clean, reliable, and affordable energy. Mining is playing a role in helping the country meet its energy security needs and deliver the just energy transition by supporting economic activity across the length and breadth of South Africa. As Anglo American, we are targeting carbon neutrality across our operations by 2040. We are making good progress by developing a regional renewable energy ecosystem in Southern Africa while supporting South Africa's Hydrogen Valley development. We are committed to changing the nature of mining and how our stakeholders benefit from our business while supporting a just energy transition. This transition needs to secure the future livelihoods of workers and their communities in the transition to a low-carbon economy. It is based on social dialogue between business, labor, civil society, and government.
Climate change is the defining challenge of our time, beyond question. It impacts the most vulnerable in our society. South Africa and its people are particularly vulnerable to the climate-induced effects, and increased occurrences of droughts, flooding, and extreme weather are evidence of this. We are committed to playing our part in energy transformation, not only because it is the right thing to do, but because we also produce many of the metals and minerals essential to securing a low-carbon future for countries across the globe. By 2020, we had already reduced our greenhouse gas emissions by 22%, our freshwater withdrawal by 20%, and improved our water recycling levels by 75%. And we are on track to achieving carbon neutrality across all our operations by 2040. In parallel, meeting global sustainability goals creates an urgent demand for the metals and minerals we produce. And we are committed to satisfying that demand in a way that is in harmony with the needs of society and the natural environment, while creating and sharing enduring value with all. The mining industry plays a pivotal role in energy transformation and is at the forefront of facilitating, supporting, and enabling the just energy transition. In support of our country's just energy transition, we have partnered with EDF Renewables to create a joint venture, Envusa Energy, to develop a 3 to 5 gigawatt regional renewable energy ecosystem. We anticipate that Envusa Energy will generate electricity for our operations while creating economic and employment opportunities and making surplus energy available through the national grid to support the country's economic development and decarbonization efforts.
We have also worked with the South African Department for Science and Innovation, the South African National Development Institute, Engie and Bambili Energy on a feasibility study for Hydrogen Valley in South Africa. Stretching from Limpopo through to Johannesburg and Durban, each hub could play a fundamental role in integrating hydrogen into South Africa's economy, with the associated benefits for employment.
By developing the proof of concept of the first hydrogen-powered fuel truck, we have set the wheels in motion for our shared journey toward carbon neutrality and paved the way for South Africa to become a world leader in green hydrogen production. Together with all stakeholders, we can build the resilience of our economy and people through affordable, decentralized, and diverse renewable energy systems, the conservation of our natural resources, equitable access to water resources, an environment that is not harmful to health and well-being, all while we promote sustainability and embedding adaptation into social programs. Over the last century, we have been an integral part of this great country. We have seen hundreds of grassroots initiatives take shape, and today we remain as committed as ever to reimagine mining to improve people's lives, to invest in helping people achieve their full potential by providing opportunities to help them develop and grow, and to operate in a manner that is safe, responsible, and sustainable. Let's remember that each drop of shared contribution has the power to ripple and create a wave of positive change. Together, let's make an ocean of difference to our business, our planet, and its people.
So that was a nice introduction into what I'll quickly run through now in the last 5 minutes I have, is an introduction to Envusa Energy. As you previously heard in the video, Anglo American over the last 2 years has been working with EDFR Renewables, who is our technology partner in developing the regional energy ecosystem that will ultimately power what is Anglo American's operations within South Africa with renewable energy, and hopefully then be able to pass that surplus energy of 3 to 5 gigawatts into the South African grid. We know that we can already do this because our operations in other parts of the world are already running on renewable energy, with South America already running entirely on that, and with further developments happening within Australia as well. South Africa presents a very different challenge, given where it is technologically and the various resources it has in order to make renewable energy a viable option, particularly because of the rich topographical resources that we have at our disposal within Southern Africa. So just a quick highlight of what Envusa is. Envusa is inspired by the Nguni word vusa, which means to awaken. We've combined that with energy to create a brand that will ultimately look to provide clean, reliable energy for South Africa's low carbon future and our own operations. As I've already mentioned before, we're doing this by building infrastructure that primarily focuses on wind and solar, and we'll have about 3 to 5 gigawatts of renewable energy at our disposal. My head of carbon neutrality is at the back over there, but if I'm not mistaken, Anglo American operations within South Africa should use about 1 to 1.5 gigawatts of that energy. Well, that means that there's a huge opportunity that is present for building some of that energy back into the grid, with the right kinds of partnerships, of course. And speaking of partnerships then, whilst we recognize that obviously this is a great commercial venture on our part, a lot of that growth and a lot of that development cannot be done without the right kinds of partnerships within South Africa, and we're working with various state actors and various community partners in order to progressively build out that energy ecosystem, particularly because it is spread out across the entire Southern African region. I'm going to jump through some of these because they've already been mentioned in the video. But a big part of what we're aiming to do, obviously, is that we are fully cognizant that, obviously, part of what we're doing is to make sure that we keep business continuity within our operations. But Anglo American never has and never will really isolate as an island. And so it's important to us that we are responding to the social and economic needs of the country as well. And so we've made sure that in building out our renewable energy ecosystem, we're marrying or baking into the DNA of our operations, into the DNA of what we're doing, the needs of society at the time. And I think most of us who are at least from South Africa have a particular understanding of the energy needs that the country needs. But it's not just about, that's not necessarily a trait of South Africa in and of itself. That's a trend we're seeing across the globe. And being able to pump renewable energy into the grid to add resilience to the existing coal baseline is one of the key things that's important to us. The technical team is going to shut me off in a second, so I just want to give you a bird's eye view, a quick illustration of what we're attempting to do. This is one of the options of how we would build out our renewable energy infrastructure. First and foremost, focusing on building out our renewable energy assets at our sites, and then progressively moving on from there as various opportunities avail themselves. With that said, then, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. If there are any questions, please feel free to give me a shout, or feel free to give me a shout whenever you bump into me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Leander, and it's great to see the initiative Envusa Energy from Anglo American. The Just Transition Pathways work that most of you in the room supported put forward that we need 6 to 12 gigawatts of renewables per year to meet our net zero targets by 2050. So if this comes online, or I should rather say when this comes online, it will be a key enabler to helping us achieve that net zero target by 2050. So thanks to Anglo American. Next up, we have Mr. Vuyo Khahla from Sasol. Welcome.
Just firstly, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As introduced, I'm Vuyo Khahla, Executive Director and Executive Vice President for Strategy, Sustainability and Integrated Services for Sasol Limited. We're excited to be in this interaction with yourselves. There's always a lot to say about Sasol, and especially after the disruption of our AGM, everybody else believes there's something more to be said about us. I think what we're proud of is that we've always been a part of the solution when it comes to energy security for South Africa, and we will continue to be part of the solution when it comes to energy security for South Africa. Of course, it is important, and we've made that clear in doing so, that we equally have to be focused around our own transformation, our own transition. We have confidence that we can get to that point. I've got to just leave those compliance factors in respect of the statements I've got to be making in relation to our forward-looking statements, and you can spend more time or even coming to me to ask for us to provide you with those forward-looking statements. With the noise sometimes coming through, it's important just for us to make it clear on a few things. We are committed to reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and we have communicated our aim of 30% reduction by 2030, and that's off our 2017 baseline. And we're setting that out as a foundation to reach a net zero ambition by 2050. We support the Paris Agreement and remain committed to playing our own part in the global effort to meet the goals set out in the Paris Agreement. Furthermore, we accept the mainstream climate science assessed by the IPCC for net zero carbon dioxide emissions to be reached by 2050. And we also recognize the importance of adaptation as well as resilience, particularly taking into account our facilities in Lake Charles, in South Africa, as well as in Mozambique. And we do believe that business has a key role to play in ensuring a fair and just energy transition that unlocks societal value whilst also managing the risks relating to climate. This, ladies and gentlemen, sets out the pathway that we've been following. And this is really a pathway anchored in our own strategy. Our strategy at Sasol, in what we refer to as the Future Sasol Strategy, is actually anchored on 3 pillars, which is reset, essentially resetting our current business, enabling it to be resilient in order for it to enable us to transform and ultimately to enable us to transition and ultimately to reinvent our business. And you're seeing that anchored also in those pillars. This is in respect of our climate change approach. We are committed to reducing our emissions by integrating renewable energy and greater energy efficiency across our existing operations. And that gives us the opportunity then to transform our operations by reducing our coal feedstock, and it's important we emphasize that we have been focused around us reducing our own coal feedstock, which will then require innovative solutions to utilize coal more efficiently, as well as integrate other low and lower carbon feedstocks over time. And alternative feedstocks for us mean that we will continue to use coal, albeit in lower quantities, as well as transition gas in the near to medium term until sustainable sources of carbon and or green hydrogen become affordable and most likely in the long term. And equally, we do factor in the potential use of biomass as well as direct air capture as soon as we're able to do that on a commercially, when they can be deployed in a commercially large scale. And ultimately, what you see was leading us to 2050 is around us shifting, reinventing Sasol. And of course, the underpin to all of this is a number of signposts that we are focusing on. They include technology, what's developing in relation to technology, what are the costs in relation to technology. And again, if people talk, for example, about green hydrogen, we've seen costs come down in respect of renewables. We're looking at that equally coming through in respect of electrolyzers, and those will enable us to deploy green hydrogen at scale. Regulation is important. It's something that's been said a lot, as well as, again, the macro trends covering the price of gas, of hydrogen, biomass availability. And so these are all important in enabling us to transition. We're giving here a sense that we're not just talking about what we can do in the future, and sometimes when our message is distorted, the impression given is that this is a pipe dream. Sasol is selling something that could be done. By the time we get to 2030, they'll tell us, sorry, we couldn't do anything. But you can see here, we committed ourselves to the procurement of renewable, not, of course, at the same extent as what Anglo has just indicated, but 1.2 gigawatts. And we've got, of that 1.2 gigawatts, over 600 megawatts has already been signed. We've got power purchase agreements in relation to that. We have also commissioned a behind-the-meter 3-megawatt solar farm adjacent to operations to really facilitate our green hydrogen project, which is what's reflected in the next point, that we actually launched our first green hydrogen, commissioned it in June, and we are producing green hydrogen off the benefit of that adjacent farm. And of course, we're bringing in even more power through our the Msenge Emoyeni wind farm in the Eastern Cape, which would bring to us another 69 megawatts that's dedicated to this green hydrogen project. And of course, this green hydrogen project is important for our partnership with Anglo American Platinum, with Toyota Motor SA, as well as BMW SA. And we believe through that we can begin to bring in green hydrogen into the mobility space, and we're working those as proof of concept studies. We continue to be focused around our gas production in Mozambique, and we've extended the plateau to 2028, putting us in a space where we can have comfort, that we will be able to meet our gas expectations to 2030. Important equally, of course, is continually focusing on energy efficiency, and we're looking at a number of projects to enable energy efficiency, as well as indicating again another proof point about our commitment to cleaner energy, cleaner fuels, is that we've started producing low sulfur diesel, 10 parts per million, 10 ppm diesel in Natref, and we're well set to meet our commitments to the new standards of clean fuels by 2026. Now, this begins to give us a sense around what we could become in terms of the shift, in terms of reinventing ourselves. We already are a big producer of gray hydrogen, and we do see an opportunity you could move through blue hydrogen and into green hydrogen. And it's all on the basis of the technology prowess we have through our FT synthesis process. We already have been involved in producing synthetic fuels. We're not new to them. And so when we speak about our ability to play an important role in respect of sustainable aviation fuels, we've tested this in terms of synthetic fuels before. Sustainable chemicals, we've already been working on that. And part of this has also been about partnerships, including with our customers, the likes of Procter & Gamble, and we respond to what they're looking for. For example, let's say on the surfactant space, if you're looking for washing powder that uses less energy but has the same effectiveness, if not better than that, we have been able to bring to bear our own technology and innovations in this space. Fundamental to all of this is that we've got to win with our people, with our communities. We've got to make sure that we continue on the phased approach we've been taking around just transition to make sure that we've got a clear roadmap around our just energy transition. We've established our just transition office, we're incorporating the views of our stakeholders, and we believe through all of this we will be able to transition and move forward, but our aim is not to leave people behind, but is to win with people. And it's always been our focus on attaining the transition, but attaining it with our people. Thanks a lot, ladies and gentlemen.
Any questions for Mr. Kahla? I think we saved you from questions. Thank you, Mr. Kahla, and thank you for that presentation. I think most of us South Africans know that Sasol is one of the largest employers in the South African economy, and it's imperative to get the just transition correct. So it's great to see some initiatives to spur that. I mean, yesterday Shamini spoke about skilling and some of the programs that they have, including bursaries for new entrants into this green economy, as well as skilling within Sasol themselves, from the mine workers right up until the exec levels, to enable them to get the transition correct. So thank you, Sasol. Next up, we have Mr. Dan Dowling from PwC.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Really happy to be here. I'll address my presence first. I'm actually standing in for our colleagues in PwC Africa who are caught up in travel logistics, so they asked me to step in at short notice. I hope to some extent that makes this entertaining for you as I try to represent a continent's net zero journey with about 5 minutes preparation. But no, there'll be some seriousness because I'm part of the global PwC team. I'm a partner for net zero strategy and transformation, and I work with our clients every day on these issues. So hopefully I can do it some justice, but I just wanted to let you know that was the case. So what type of business is PwC? We're a brand many people know, but first off, we're a people business. I think what is important to our journey, and particularly around net zero, is the fact that we've got some 365,000 people globally. And it's actually, for us, the challenge is not so much the product, and we've heard quite a bit about energy-intensive industries dealing with big carbon footprints through the value chain. We've got a whole bunch of people and offices, and yes, that might seem easier to deal with at some extent, but actually it's really challenging because you need behaviors to change. And actually we don't have the same tools and technologies to help people change their behaviors. The other really important piece about our firm, or our network of firms globally, is that we work with a huge number of clients on this agenda. And if we think about the total impact we can have as an organisation, it's not just through our people, but it's also through the work that we do with our clients. So I keep that very much in mind as I present to you an operational strategy that's dealing with our own, if you like, in-house net zero journey. Okay, just to summarise, and this applies as much as it does to any individual PwC Africa firm, as much as it does to the global network. We have a net zero goal for 2030, which is really pretty aggressive and reflects the type of organisation we are. We don't have hugely capital intensive processes, so we should be able to move quicker than others who have some long-term investment cycles to walk through. Net zero by 2030 to us, it means net zero. And to that end, we have particularly our Scope 1 and 2 targets validated by an organisation called the Science Based Targets Initiative. So that effectively assures that the targets we presented are in line with the Paris Agreement, 1.5 degrees, i.e. the climate science for a safe future. That's pretty aggressive. It means you need to move pretty quickly and pretty immediately. Some of the commitments that sit within that is to achieve an absolute reduction in our Scope 1 and 2 emissions by 2030. Now, that's despite the growth we might make. Personally, I've been with the firm about 13 years, and when I arrived, we had, I guess, 150,000 people. So we've got far more than double the sort of population, yet we're making commitments to halve those emissions in the next 6 years. So if you think about it, some people set targets based on intensity. That's for per unit of revenue or per capita in your organisation. Here we're talking about absolute terms, so it's sort of more than 50%, assuming we continue to grow as an organisation. So that's pretty aggressive, first of all. Secondly, a big commitment for us, because we have a lot of office space, is around our commitment to 100% renewable energy, using the criteria of the RE100 programme. So again, an international organisation that sets the standards for doing this well, or best in class. We're already at 91%, I think, globally, so making some really good progress on that, and should achieve that well ahead of target. Quick comment then on Scope 3 emissions categories. So those include our business travel. And for this is a big one for us, and it's a tricky one, because it's really important for us to be traveling, to see each other, to be with our clients in context, on site, etc. And so as you can imagine, our sort of business travel emissions are quite significant. Globally, it's a challenge, and if any of you have implemented net zero carbon reduction programs in your businesses, you'll know that the least fond decarbonisation lever that you have access to is tackling senior people and their business travel, because nobody wants to give up their business class seat if they travel in that way, etc. So that's really hard to do, and both in PwC South Africa specifically and in the UK, there are now restrictions on business class flights, which we've seen other organisations struggle to implement. I, for one, am a UK partner. I cannot book a business class travel ticket, and nor can our senior partner in the firm. So nobody travels business class anymore for any sort of daytime, short-term flights. If there's a business need, an overnight trip with a speaking engagement the next morning or something, it can be a little bit different. That's quite a big step, because it really has a personal impact for people. Last point on Scope 3 I'll just make is around our supply chain. So this is where we have quite a significant portion of our emissions, but we don't have huge control over what our suppliers do. That journey is much more of an engagement journey, and we've set engagement targets which include us targeting getting 50% of that supply chain by emissions signed up to their own science-based targets by 2025. If any of you have been through the SBTI process, it is rigorous, it's really, really difficult, and a lot of organisations don't believe it's possible. So to actually get up to 50% is a pretty significant target. But we are making good progress. I will flag to you the challenges that we're going to have with that in a few moments. Two other things at the sort of bookends here. One is we're going to report transparently on our emissions, both at firm level and at global level, and you can Google if you're interested to see our full inventory and all of our progress. Secondly, we do need to deliver a portion of emissions offsetting to achieve our net zero target. Ideally, you remove all of the carbon, that residual carbon that exists. You do have to engage with offsetting initiatives. Critical to getting that right is for those offsets to make sense in terms of the strategy and business that we are. So that means about working in the adjacent places in which we have an impact, particularly the geographies in which our firm has an impact and presence. Secondly, those carbon credits need to be extremely high standard. Whether you're using Verra Gold Standard or others, there are certified carbon credits that demonstrate in many cases that at least most of the right carbon reducing activities have taken place in the right way. So that's really important. And the final thing is that we're trying to move that whole portfolio of offsets to carbon removals. So rather than funding renewable energy projects, many of which actually perform quite well financially, we are moving to nature-based solutions and working with some of the natural capital systems which actually take carbon out of the atmosphere rather than just limit its production. So just to zoom in now on how we're doing on the continent. So a couple of updates from the team. Firstly, on Scope 1 and 2, so we're now looking at PwC African firms as a whole. Those emissions have come down significantly over the last couple of years. Now, that's not just the amazing implementation performance. Let's be clear, the first impact in FY22 was around COVID and the impact of different styles of working. And so we're now seeing a rebound effect on offices being occupied, et cetera, and people doing more intensive physical work activity and travel. The second thing we did though, the yellow bars here represent our electricity footprint, and there was a very big significant reduction in those emissions as we complied with RE100's processes for meeting renewable energy targets. Yes, at the moment, a lot of renewable energy certificates form part of that plan, and we're looking to transition to more direct PPAs and other on-site development of renewables, if you like, moving up the maturity curve of that renewable electricity commitment. So we're working on that, and it was interesting to hear about Envusa earlier from Anglo, because I guess we're looking for projects that are going to be producing power and that we can contract with to get those direct agreements in place. So just two more quick updates. I mentioned business travel earlier. Again, you can see, if we were to report on performance, it can look very good, just looking at the numbers. And there is underlying progress, and we need to sort of disaggregate that to get a really accurate picture. And you can actually really see in FY23, the final column on the right there, the rebound effect we're beginning to see as people are getting back into some form of normal travel pattern. I say that in inverted commas because, of course, we're trying to change that significantly. So where this rebound effect comes back to is critical for us in knowing whether we really are on target. And of course, as we begin to cut into that travel overhead, it gets more and more difficult over time to really secure those reductions, because there are things that we really need to do in person. And with the progress of sustainable aviation fuels, etc., yes, we've got some options, but it's really hard to control those emissions on the whole. Okay, finally, let's look at the suppliers briefly and how we're doing. So I mentioned this is really difficult. It certainly is. The pink bar at the bottom shows that we do have validated science-based targets for 25% of our emissions in our supply chain. That's not bad, because it's hard. As I said, it takes quite a bit of time for organisations to work through that process. The 10% have then committed to setting those targets and will currently be working on them. And the top part is what we're still, I guess, struggling with and are currently working towards 2025 to see if we can get that final portion converted. So this is pretty challenging, and the way we go about doing this generally is by doing quite a lot of upskilling with our suppliers, quite a lot of signalling, and where necessary, starting to introduce some levers to shift that supply chain. And you can do that through really positive and soft mechanisms, or you can get a bit more serious about contracting penalties, performance standard, pricing, etc. Less good for the relationship, but actually with some organisations you just need to start signalling where the puck is going, as it were. So we'll continue that journey, but overall I think we feel pleased with progress so far. We're off a 2019 baseline. I think it's pretty clear we'll deliver the 50% reduction in absolute emissions that we're looking for. And like many organisations, are working really hard to think about how can we better deliver on our Scope 3 impact. Okay, I'll leave it there. Thanks for listening. Happy to answer any questions on PwC's global journey to net zero. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan, and interesting to see that PwC is also looking into how they can support their suppliers in order to reduce Scope 3 emissions. I think there's great case studies coming online about working with suppliers to set science-based targets, training them in order to facilitate them submitting to then enable the company to meet their net zero target. So thanks, Dan, for that. Next up, we do have Mr. Feroz Sheikh from Polyco, who will give you more insight into Polyco Pro South Africa. Welcome.
And good afternoon, everyone. For me, it's a bit of an odd situation being here. I joined Polyco in August of this year. I was in a very different role prior to this. I was actually the Chief of Staff to the Minister for Environment. So I've been exposed to a lot of the work that the companies are doing here. But joining Polyco for me was obviously a very conscious decision, and one that I'm going to run you guys through very shortly. So Polyco is a producer responsibility organization, and we manage the extended producer responsibility program, which was implemented by government in 2021, which basically talks about how companies in South Africa that produce any form of waste ensure that that waste is diverted from landfills, and that we make strategic investments in ensuring that we try and get more households on board. What we found is that we have only about 5% of individuals that sort of recycle in South Africa. And for us, one of the things we want to do is get that rate much more increased. But our ultimate investment for us is to see, and I like the idea that PwC together is looking at strategic investments, because for us, we want to look at the waste to energy initiatives in South Africa. We believe that that is something which is really underinvested at the moment. We do know that we have, I think it's about 46 million tons of waste currently sitting at our landfills, and for us it's about how do we access those, working with government, municipalities as well as provincial governments to give us access to those strategic resources for us, which we believe can be plowed back in. So a bit more just about Polyco. We're currently working with 140 collection and recycling businesses. Over the last 2 years, we've invested about 120 million into the plastic recycling space. And we've diverted about 300,000 tons over the last 10 years. One of the initiatives which we're currently focusing on, which we believe has a huge role to sort of deal with multiple factors in South Africa about our unemployment rate as well, but also just being more responsible. If we've got an example of our packaging, which we do in collaboration with Sasol, who is one of our fantastic members. So our packaging model is really aimed at our direct interactions with households. We're currently primarily focused in the low-income areas, where we've to date sort of collected 16 million kilograms of recycled waste. We're servicing 85 communities, and we've paid out over 16 million rand to individuals directly. Now this, I need to emphasize, is paid to individuals. Those are the waste pickers and the waste reclaimers that we see moving along with those little trolleys. But what we're trying to do with the packaging model is get the waste reclaimers to form cooperatives where they then have access to the trucks. Okay, we don't sponsor the trucks, but they have the ability to access that. What we do sponsor is roughly it's about 500,000 to 750,000 rand investment, where we're putting together a trailer. We give them access to a float, which enables them to be sort of a business in a box. We give them access to, through the colleagues at Sasol, they give us the fuel that sponsors a lot of the work that these guys do by moving around. The problem that we're faced with, as you can see what we've said in the beginning, is that only 5% of South Africans currently recycle. It really is a sad number for us to be looking at, but the idea is how do we increase that? And what we found is that there is a lack of education about recycling in South Africa, which is something we're currently focusing on as Polyco. Also, the infrastructure is not available for this to happen. So one of the things that Polyco is looking at, and we've engaged the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment, as well as municipalities, is how do we get a 2-bin system running where we have any waste which is deemed recyclable. The biggest thing we find is that households don't really have an understanding of what is and what isn't recyclable. So for us, it's about saying, what is your organic waste? Can that get into one separate source? And can we take anything that we believe could be recyclable and put it into a separate one, so that when we have separation at source in your households, getting that then to Polyco or the likes, we've got Petco, a number of other organizations that do exist, but leaving that hard work of actually identifying what is recyclable and what isn't to be done by those who have the expertise. Households generally find it's a bit of a tedious exercise to know what should be moved, where do plastics go, etc. But for us, it's about taking that hassle out and making it more inclusive. So this, again, just a bit of an example of what we do, but I want to get to the video, which I'm hoping will play, just to give a bit of a sound.
The most breathtaking countries in the world. But when it comes to quality of life for the majority of its people, they are massively shortchanged. These communities are faced with many day-to-day problems, one of which is accumulated waste that seems almost impossible to recover from. But what if we got people to see this refuse in a different way? Not as the streets littered with litter, but with money. Meet Packaging, the Polyco project that rewards trash with cash. With the help of our mascot Packerman, in the community and schools, some billboards and posters, Packaging launched as a mobile recyclable waste collection center, where trash is collected from the public, weighed in as kilograms, and converted into its recyclable value in rands, which was loaded onto brand new debit cards and now directly onto personal cell phones via an e-wallet system. But Packaging didn't stop there, as ordinary people from around the country started turning waste into wealth by bringing in their recyclable packaging. We inspired more people to cash in on the bigger picture with their own trucks and sponsored trailers from Polyco, building their own careers as waste entrepreneurs. These packaging entrepreneurs then employ others, creating jobs in a country in dire need of employment opportunities. While the online response was great, the real rewards were seen in places far away from social media. Packaging is now operating all across the nation and has achieved some very impressive results so far. Phase 2 of Packaging is now underway, with 25 new mobile trade units rolling out across South Africa over the next few years. By educating, engaging, and empowering the public, we set an example of a healthy relationship with waste, restore dignity to our neighborhoods, and balance to the environment, all while giving opportunities and extra income to those who need it most. Polyco and Packaging, making waste work for everyone.
All right, fantastic. So I'm going to leave that as sort of the video just spoke to what it is. But for me, I think the most important thing that we're taking away from this is that as Polyco, we are relatively new. The EPR legislation is new in South Africa. So the opportunities for growth and expanding for us is one of the reasons why we thought being within this space is sort of key at this moment in time. And we're looking forward to further interactions with the likes of PwC, Sasol, so that we can achieve what it is that we've set out. We're not at the similar level, I'd like to believe, as the Anglos and Sasols, but we've found that we do have a social responsibility as well when it comes to dealing with the waste in our environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Feroz. I see there's a question from Storm.
Thanks for this excellent and inspirational initiative. I just want to know, what do you do with any waste that's non-recyclable? Is there any plans around that? I'm assuming it also gets mixed in with the waste that you do collect that is recyclable.
So when you say waste that isn't, do you have any specific example that you'd want to make reference to?
I don't in general, but I do know,
Okay,
even
so
when sorting my own waste, I know
Yeah.
certain, like the clamshell plastics, for example, aren't necessarily recyclable.
So Polyco is invested in a company called the CRDC. That was an investment that we'd done last year. It's about 6 to 7 million. They're still in a sort of their initial stages, but their idea is they're looking at taking what we would say hard to recycle plastics, or things that generally don't find their way to the normal recycle piles. And we're making now bricks for houses. We've also found it useful for paving. And that's where the discussion now happens with government, where we're saying, what are the alternatives that we can use this plastics for, when we find that, again, the hard to recycle plastics that nobody really has an appetite for, but still has an intrinsic value. So that's the work we're doing with the DFFE, CSIR, as well as the company called CRDC.
So do you currently collect that plastic?
Yes, it's
Okay,
currently
excellent.
is collected. The problem that we do find, and I think what we're looking for as solutions in South Africa, is the biggest issue we have is how do we get that waste, which we find to be in areas that are sort of far-flung. We know that there's not an adequate support system for our networks, for rail, etc. So if we had better integration with our rail network operators, it would be more feasible to be moving that waste across the board. So that's what we're trying to do, is bridge those gaps, because with the plastic waste, you need the kilos are what really makes the difference. And being able to move that by truck really isn't feasible at the moment, but we do have obviously a plan to expand, and we have engagements with government at that point.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Good.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Feroz. An excellent initiative to empower and educate communities to turn waste into wealth. So we wish Polyco well on their journey. I think last but not least, we have Mr. Tej Pushkok from Scatec. Welcome, Mr. Tej.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, and also thank you for some inspiring presentations. I truly get inspired when I see some of these presentations. Scatec is a Norwegian company. Let's see, are we going? Yeah, so I'll just give a short introduction first, and then I think we will go to a video. So Scatec is a Norwegian company, but the purpose of our company, the mission of our company is improving our future. So what does it mean for us? Improving our future, we improve the future through implementing renewable energy in emerging markets. So we develop, we finance, we construct, we own and operate renewable energy projects with a long-term perspective. And we believe that what we do does not only improve the future through implementing renewable energy and contributing to the green transition, but it also improves the future through what we bring to the local communities where we work, by us providing employment, by us providing economic development in the communities that we work. We also believe that we take care of the nature and the environment in the way that we work. And we also work actively together with our supply chains to make sure that we also over time improve how the supply chains work and make sure that they also become greener over time. So it's not only about what we do specifically in terms of building and operating renewable energy projects, providing green energy to the countries where we operate, but it's also about sort of the responsibility we take as a company in terms of what we do on a broader basis. In terms of the company, we have about 4.3 gigawatts of projects currently in operation across emerging markets. Specifically in terms of South Africa, we have developed and built and are currently operating about 0.5 gigawatt in South Africa that we secured through REAP rounds 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then we are currently now, as we speak, commissioning a hybrid project between solar and batteries that can generate energy, renewable energy on a base load basis. So basically this facility which is a 540 megawatt facility with 225 megawatts of battery storage, can produce energy from 5 a.m. in the morning until 9:30 in the evening. So basically over 16 and a half hours on a fully dispatchable basis. So this is, in principle now, bringing renewable energy, being competitive in South Africa, in Africa and in emerging markets in general on a baseload basis. And I think this is really amazing because it just shows how the technology development and the innovation is really picking up speed and making renewable energy the clear choice when it comes to energy production in emerging markets, in the global south, and in the Sun Belt regions. So I think this is one of the most amazing projects that is currently happening. And then in addition in South Africa, to what we already have, we will also start construction, a 273 megawatt solar project that was secured in round 5. And we were also now just awarded one of the battery projects that was awarded earlier this week from the DMRC in South Africa. So I think with that, I think we have a video which is showing some impressions from the hybrid project, which is then basically showing how we are producing dispatchable energy from a project.
If we were to look at it on day one, it would have scared us. It's the largest of its kind on the continent, and with that comes a large financing requirement. That's a capability only Standard Bank has. It's just the only institution with that type of scale.
Global Markets gets involved right at the end of financial close, and what that means we have to do is we have to go and implement currency hedges in the market. We were able to execute all the currency in the space of a couple of hours at a very tight margin, so it was a fantastic outcome for the clients in the end.
We were able to demonstrate to the market that it is competitive to compete against fossil fuel-based technologies in delivering continuous power to the markets.
We believe that renewable energy is playing an absolute critical role in addressing the needs of power and power supply on this continent. You probably have never heard of a small town called Kennard in the Northern Cape. High unemployment number, almost no development in the little town, and now suddenly an investment of beyond 15 billion rand. After this transaction, this little town will definitely be put on the map.
The Scatec deal will have many different impacts at the project level, at the community level, to support emerging black businesses, women-owned vendors.
Ek is Rwanda Smit en Kennard. Om as 'n vrou in 'n manslike omgewing te werk, is nie vir my 'n issue nie, want ek ken van harde werk. Die eerste keer toe ek in die eskalator geklim het, was ek bang. Die masjien is baie groot en ek het gedink dat ek kan baie foute maak. My gelukkigste oomblik is die dag toe my manager en my supervisor my promoted na 'n teamleader. My lewe het verander toe ek begin 'n salaris verdien wat ek kon gebruik om my familie te help om vorentoe te gaan. Steeds tot vandaag toe kan ek my gesin onderhou met kos en klere, water en elektrisiteit. I can see the changes in the community because there's many things happening that never happened before.
Power projects actually support economic growth. Not only the direct impact, but also the indirect impact that we see in one of the best transactions of the century.
I believe in here because Africa and her people give us reasons every day. So what Africa is to me is just a perpetual series of opportunities for hope. If we were to look
Yeah, so thank you. I think I've been through quite a lot of what I wanted to say already, but I think it's some of the key things to take away from this video and from this project is first of all that in terms of doing projects like this, it is a partnership. You have to do it based on partnerships, and obviously the private sector plays a very important role in doing this. But in order for the private sector to succeed with projects like this, there also needs to be clear and predictable regulations and policies. And I think if there's one thing where South Africa stands out relative to what we've seen in many other countries in Africa over the last 10 to 15 years where we've been active in South Africa, is that in terms of the renewable energy procurement program, it has been consistent. There has been delays, there has been difficulties, there has been bureaucracy, but it has been consistent, and at the end, these projects have been implemented. It has a very, very strong implementation rate. And obviously, the other thing that comes out in terms of partnership here is that this is obviously not only about Scatec. It is about the local companies, it's about the developers, it's about the BEE investors, it's about the financing institutions, and it's about the local communities and how you're able to work in a good way together with the local communities. In this project, we had 2,400 workers on site at peak. 70% of those workers were female workers, and about 80% or 90% of the workers were actually from the local communities. And that's obviously one of the good things when it comes to renewable energy projects like this. There's a lot of relatively straightforward tasks that needs to be done. So with a bit of training, you can actually use a lot of the people from the local communities, train them to do the certain tasks that needs to be done, and basically employ them into this. And that's how I believe that renewable energy is creating a lot of ripple effects. And it's not only ripple effects related to providing green energy, but it's also ripple effects in terms of providing economic development and employment in the areas where we work. So I think we'll show another quick video, and this is just also to show you quickly a bit around the size of this project. So the size of the project is 10 kilometers from one side to the other side of the project. It's close to 1 million solar panels being installed. It is 456 battery storage containers, each 40 feet, weighing about 30 tons. And it's a project that was implemented and constructed in somewhere between 12 and 15 months. So I hope that you get a bit of an impression for the size of the project. But this is the type of project that brings us forward with renewable energy, not only being an intermittent source that needs to be taken when it's being produced, but renewable energy also becoming a dispatchable and baseload energy source that you can basically integrate into the grid, and partly also can provide stability services to the grid. So I think with that, thank you very much. And then I guess we are open for questions, if there are any.
Thanks. Thanks so much, Tej, for the presentation. Just for clarity, is it just battery storage that brings the dispatchability characteristic on the project, or is there another technology combination that comes with the project? I think I missed that a little bit, and I can't really see from here. And secondly, I know that currently we're starting to have a challenge with the location/grid availability interplay, and that has to do with resource location in the main. Outside of that, are you looking, or do you have an appetite as a company to begin to look at alternative sites where we do have grid availability into the future? Because I think South Africa needs that now more than ever. And lastly, any appetite on the company for mini grids elsewhere, where we can't really reach a greater circulation. Thanks.
Yes. So on the first question, this is only solar and batteries. So there is no other technology involved, and we have about 1.1 gigawatt hours of battery storage. So we have battery storage covering 6 to 7 hours of the energy that we at any point in time need to deliver. So we have now already commissioned, and we are in operations with the 2 first of 3 of these projects. And typically we see that when we start generating energy again from the solar power panels in the morning, we have 30 to 40% energy left in the batteries. So we have a good buffer to be able to deliver the dispatchable energy that we have committed to under the agreement. But there's no other technology involved. Then I agree with you. I mean, clearly you start developing solar and you start developing wind where the cost is the lowest and where you have best resources. And this is nothing particular for South Africa. I think that this is something that we see all over the place, that at a certain point in time, the grid will be congested where you have the best resources for solar and for wind. So this is, I mean, this is an issue that can obviously be solved in different ways. South Africa has started to work on it, partly to introduce batteries at certain congested substations, with reference to the award of the battery storage tender that was just done. Obviously, the second part you need to do is strengthen the grid and build out the grid, and the third thing you need to do is to also build out renewable energy in the less than perfect area. So clearly, we as a company, we are also looking at product development across the country, across South Africa, in terms of also sort of finding the other areas where it's good for us to develop projects and where we believe is going to be grid capacity for renewable projects also in the future. So we are looking at that as well. Then in terms of the third question that you have, mini grids. Scatec has so far not looked into developing and building out mini grids. We have another solution that we work on in terms of providing energy sort of at the end of the grid and in smaller installations. And it wasn't mentioned here, but I like to sort of market that as well. We were also part of the pilot project that Sasol did, not sort of being sort of on the front page, but we were delivering the solar solution that energy used for the renewable energy generation that were used to produce the green hydrogen for the Sasol trucks. So we were, not Sasol, but Anglo, sorry, for the Anglo trucks, yeah. So we were also part of that, and the solution that we have there is something that we call a release, which basically is a container-based, already mounted and redeployable solution, so that you can basically quite easily put up a certain amount of renewable energy, solar energy panels. But you can also pack them together again and take them into repackage them into the containers and transport them to other places. So that's sort of more the smaller or sort of micro siting approach that we are having, but we're not involved in microgrids.
Any other questions before we close? Okay, great. Thanks everyone, and thanks to our esteemed panel. I think it was excellent to see initiatives already underway and what's to come in the future. Also interesting to see the collaboration, I mean, at least on the panel, amongst most of you here. So all the best with your initiatives and good luck with net zero by 2050. Thank you.